Reality television has given us arguments, tears, and unforgettable one-liners. But what reportedly unfolded between Tamar Braxton and Towanda Braxton may have crossed into something far more personal than anyone expected. According to eyewitness accounts from a recent taping, Tamar allegedly confronted her sister with claims that Towanda's husband had been unfaithful, and she didn't just hint at it. She came prepared. Sources say the atmosphere shifted instantly. What was supposed to be a routine production day reportedly turned into silence thick enough to feel. Family members froze. Producers scrambled. And Towanda, blindsided, appeared overwhelmed as Tamar insisted she had evidence that couldn't be ignored. But here's where it gets complicated. Was Tamar exposing a painful truth out of love? Or did taking it public create a wound that may never fully close? Because when accusations of betrayal collide with cameras and legacy, the damage doesn't stay contained. It echoes. Now fans are divided, emotions are raw, and the Braxton sisterhood is facing one of its most difficult chapters yet. To understand why this moment reportedly exploded the way it did, you have to understand the history between Tamar Braxton and Towanda Braxton. Their dynamic has always been layered. Tamar, outspoken and emotionally transparent, has never been afraid to challenge what she believes is false. Towanda, often perceived as calmer and more reserved, has historically tried to hold the middle ground when family tensions rise. That contrast alone has created friction over the years, but it has also created balance. For decades, the Braxton sisters have navigated fame together. From music to reality television, their lives have unfolded in front of an audience that feels personally invested. Viewers have watched them argue about money, loyalty, management, and misunderstandings. But through it all, there has always been an unspoken agreement: family comes first, even when it hurts. That's why this alleged confrontation reportedly felt different. According to sources close to the production, what began as a routine meeting for an upcoming project slowly shifted in tone before anyone realized what was happening. Tamar, who had been noticeably quiet earlier in the day, allegedly appeared tense. Some insiders claim she had been carrying information for months, information she believed Towanda deserved to know fully. The issue, reportedly, involved suspicions surrounding Towanda's husband and alleged inappropriate interactions with other women. It's important to note that these claims have not been confirmed publicly by Towanda herself. However, multiple sources say Tamar believed she had seen enough to feel morally conflicted staying silent. Allegedly, Tamar first approached Towanda privately weeks before the now-discussed on-camera moment. According to insiders, that conversation did not go well. Towanda reportedly dismissed the concerns, suggesting that misunderstandings or outside interference were at play. Tamar, on the other hand, allegedly felt that what she had seen couldn't be brushed off as coincidence. And this is where emotional tension began building quietly. Family members were reportedly aware that something was off, though no one wanted to be the person to escalate it. In families, especially high-profile ones, there's often pressure to protect image. There's also fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of humiliating someone publicly. Fear of damaging a marriage that might still be salvageable. Sources claim Tamar struggled with that exact dilemma. On one hand, she didn't want to be accused of meddling. On the other, she reportedly felt complicit if she stayed silent while her sister potentially faced betrayal. That internal conflict allegedly followed her onto the set that day. Witnesses say the room initially felt light. There were casual conversations, planning discussions, even laughter. But Tamar's energy reportedly shifted when Towanda began speaking about her marriage in a positive light. According to insiders, Tamar allegedly interrupted with a pointed question that immediately changed the atmosphere. "You sure you want to keep pretending?" she reportedly said. The air, sources claim, went still. Towanda allegedly looked confused at first, unsure whether Tamar was joking. But Tamar reportedly continued, suggesting she had proof that Towanda's husband had not been faithful. At that point, producers are said to have hesitated, unsure whether to cut cameras or let the moment unfold naturally. This wasn't just gossip. It was a potential implosion. According to those present, Tamar didn't raise her voice initially. In fact, some describe her tone as controlled, almost too calm. She allegedly referenced screenshots, messages, and conversations that had raised red flags. She reportedly insisted she had verified what she could before bringing it up. Towanda, insiders say, appeared blindsided. Whether that was because she genuinely didn't know or because she didn't expect Tamar to say it publicly remains unclear. What is clear, according to multiple accounts, is that emotion took over quickly. Towanda allegedly denied the claims at first. She reportedly questioned the validity of the evidence and accused Tamar of believing outsiders over her own sister. That accusation alone struck a nerve. Tamar, according to sources, responded by saying she had no interest in humiliating Towanda, but refused to protect lies. That phrase reportedly echoed in the room long after it was said. Other family members present did not immediately intervene. Some reportedly looked down. Others appeared visibly uncomfortable. And that silence, whether out of shock or uncertainty, may have intensified Towanda's sense of isolation in that moment. The emotional build-up wasn't just about alleged infidelity. It was about loyalty. About whether exposing a painful truth is an act of love or an act of betrayal. Insiders claim Tamar felt she had already given Towanda time to address the situation privately. From her perspective, bringing it up publicly was a last resort. But from Towanda's perspective, if she felt blindsided, the choice to say it on camera could have felt like a breach of trust. That difference in perspective is crucial. Because families often operate on different emotional timelines. What one person sees as overdue honesty, another sees as premature exposure. According to reports, Towanda eventually became visibly emotional. Her voice reportedly cracked, as she asked why Tamar would do this in front of everyone. Tamar allegedly responded that she had waited long enough. Producers, sensing the volatility, are said to have stepped in shortly after. Cameras may have stopped briefly, though that detail remains unconfirmed. What is confirmed is that word of the confrontation spread quickly among crew members and eventually beyond the set. Within hours, speculation began circulating online that something major had happened during filming. But here's the deeper layer. Even if the allegations were true, the question remains whether the delivery mattered more than the information itself. Tamar reportedly believed she was preventing further humiliation by forcing transparency. Towanda may have felt humiliated by the exposure itself. And in that gap between intention and impact, relationships fracture. At this stage, neither sister had publicly detailed the full story. No official statement had clarified what exactly was said, what evidence existed, or whether reconciliation was even possible. All the public had were whispers, vague social media posts, and the visible tension between two sisters who once prided themselves on unity. What started as a marriage question was quickly becoming a family crisis. Because once trust cracks on camera, it doesn't just affect two people. It affects legacy. It affects business partnerships. It affects how fans interpret every future interaction. And as the dust from that confrontation began to settle, one thing was undeniable: the Braxton sisterhood had entered a new chapter. Whether that chapter would end in healing or deeper division remained to be seen. In the hours after the reported confrontation, the atmosphere surrounding the family allegedly shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. What had once been underlying tension was now visible. Not loud, not explosive, but heavy. According to insiders, once filming paused, the room reportedly split into emotional corners. Towanda is said to have stepped away first, escorted by someone from production. Tamar allegedly remained seated for a moment, composed on the surface, but visibly shaken underneath. Witnesses claim she stood by what she said, but even conviction doesn't cancel consequence. The first ripple wasn't public. It was internal. Family members reportedly disagreed on how the situation should have been handled. Some allegedly felt Tamar crossed a line by bringing something so sensitive into a filmed environment. Others quietly admitted they had heard similar whispers before and weren't entirely shocked by the allegation itself. The divide wasn't necessarily about whether the concern was real. It was about whether exposing it that way was justified. And that's where things became emotionally complicated. Because when cameras are involved, intention gets questioned more harshly. Was this about protecting a sister? Or protecting a storyline? That was reportedly the uncomfortable question hanging in the air. Sources say Tamar felt frustrated by that implication. She allegedly believed the family had a pattern of avoiding difficult truths for the sake of appearance. In her view, silence had already done enough damage over the years, in relationships, in finances, in trust. She reportedly felt that confronting issues head-on, even painfully, was healthier than pretending everything was intact. Towanda, on the other hand, was said to be grappling with two shocks at once. First, the allegation itself. Second, the realization that it had been voiced publicly. Even if she had privately suspected anything, having it verbalized in front of family and crew reportedly intensified the emotional blow. And then there was the marriage. According to those close to the situation, Towanda allegedly reached out to her husband soon after the incident. What was said during that conversation remains private, but sources describe it as tense and emotionally charged. When allegations surface, especially in front of cameras, denial, defensiveness, and damage control often follow quickly. But here's where the situation reportedly deepened. Some insiders claim that Tamar wasn't the only one who had seen concerning signs. There were whispers of messages that didn't sit right. Stories that felt inconsistent. Behavioral changes that raised quiet eyebrows. None of these claims have been publicly verified, but their existence reportedly contributed to Tamar's confidence in speaking up. Still, even if Tamar believed she was right, that didn't protect her from fallout. Within days, social media users began noticing subtle clues. Towanda's posts reportedly shifted in tone, less celebratory, more reflective. Tamar's online presence, meanwhile, became noticeably restrained. No cryptic quotes. No emotional captions. Just silence. And in celebrity culture, silence speaks volumes. Fans began speculating that something significant had happened behind the scenes. Some defended Tamar, arguing that real love sometimes requires uncomfortable honesty. Others criticized her, suggesting that timing and delivery matter just as much as truth. But what the public couldn't see was the private strain unfolding away from timelines and comment sections. Family dinners reportedly became awkward. Group chats allegedly went quiet. The easy laughter that once filled shared spaces was replaced with careful conversation. And when extended family members began asking questions, responses were reportedly vague and guarded. The larger concern, insiders say, wasn't just the marriage. It was trust between sisters. Towanda allegedly felt exposed, not just as a wife, but as a woman navigating vulnerability under a microscope. Tamar reportedly felt misunderstood, painted as disruptive when she believed she was protective. That emotional standoff created a fragile environment. Producers, recognizing the weight of what had occurred, were reportedly cautious about how to move forward. There were discussions about whether the confrontation should air, how much context should be included, and whether airing it would amplify harm. Reality television thrives on authenticity, but authenticity can be ethically complicated. Behind the scenes, mediation may have been suggested. Sources indicate that at least one attempt at a facilitated conversation took place days later. According to those present, the exchange was calmer but still tense. Tamar allegedly reiterated that her intention was never humiliation. Towanda reportedly expressed that intention doesn't erase impact. And that sentence, intention doesn't erase impact, reportedly lingered. Because it reframed the entire conflict. It wasn't only about whether the allegation was accurate. It was about whether Tamar respected Towanda's autonomy in handling her own marriage. Even if Tamar believed she was helping, did she unintentionally take control of a situation that wasn't hers to control? At the same time, supporters of Tamar argue that withholding serious concerns could have felt like betrayal too. If Tamar truly believed her sister was being deceived, silence might have felt complicit. That moral gray area is where this story lives. There's also the reality that public families face pressures private families don't. When your life is content, timing is rarely neutral. Every conversation risks becoming storyline. Every reaction risks being edited. According to insiders, that awareness made Towanda even more sensitive to the setting of the confrontation. If the concern was genuine, why not insist on a fully private setting? Tamar's reported answer was simple. She had already tried privately. Whether that's accurate or not remains unclear publicly. But the belief itself shaped her actions. Meanwhile, the alleged husband at the center of the claims reportedly denied wrongdoing. Without concrete public evidence, the situation remains rooted in conflicting perspectives rather than confirmed facts. As days turned into weeks, the emotional temperature reportedly cooled slightly, but distance remained. Sisters who once leaned on each other for support now navigated careful boundaries. Conversations were shorter. Interactions more measured. The public still didn't know the full story. They only sensed tension. And perhaps the most difficult layer was this: even if reconciliation happened, trust might not fully return to its previous form. When someone feels exposed during a vulnerable moment, rebuilding safety takes time. Insiders say both sisters privately acknowledged that their bond matters more than any single conflict. But acknowledging that doesn't instantly dissolve hurt. Family relationships aren't contracts. They are emotional ecosystems. When one part shifts, everything adjusts. So now the question isn't just about alleged infidelity. It's about whether honesty delivered imperfectly can still be an act of love. It's about whether public confrontation can ever coexist with private healing. And as the Braxton family navigates the aftermath, one truth remains clear: whatever happened in that room didn't just challenge a marriage. It tested sisterhood itself. By the time weeks had passed, the situation reportedly evolved from raw confrontation into quiet reflection. The initial shock had faded, but what remained was more complicated than anger. It was distance. According to insiders, both Tamar Braxton and Towanda Braxton began processing the moment differently once the emotional intensity cooled. Tamar allegedly stood firm in her belief that she acted out of concern. Towanda, however, reportedly struggled more with how it unfolded than with the content of what was said. And that distinction matters. Because when conflict moves past the explosive phase, what lingers isn't usually the words. It's the feeling attached to them. Sources close to the family claim Towanda felt exposed in a way that went beyond marriage. She allegedly felt stripped of agency, as if her ability to handle her own situation had been taken from her in front of an audience. Even if Tamar believed she was stepping in to protect her, that protection may have felt like control. Meanwhile, Tamar reportedly wrestled with frustration over being painted as the villain. Insiders say she felt that throughout the family's history, she had often been labeled too much whenever she spoke uncomfortable truths. From her perspective, this wasn't about creating drama. It was about refusing to ignore something serious. But perception rarely aligns perfectly between two people in pain. In the broader family circle, sides were reportedly never formally chosen, but emotional alignments quietly formed. Some relatives allegedly encouraged reconciliation, reminding both sisters that disagreements shouldn't outweigh decades of shared history. Others reportedly kept their distance, wary of stepping into a situation with so many unresolved layers. And then there was the looming question, would this moment air? Production discussions reportedly intensified behind closed doors. Editing choices suddenly carried heavier consequences. If the confrontation aired without context, it could damage reputations. If it didn't air, speculation might grow even louder. According to individuals familiar with the situation, the possibility of airing the moment forced both sisters to consider something uncomfortable: how much of their real pain was becoming content. Reality television thrives on vulnerability, but vulnerability doesn't always consent to being replayed. As speculation grew online, fans dissected subtle body language in recent appearances. They analyzed who stood next to whom in group photos. They counted likes and unfollows. Social media became a magnifying glass. Yet neither sister publicly confirmed the details. Towanda's posts reportedly leaned toward themes of strength, self-worth, and resilience. Tamar's content appeared focused on personal growth and peace. Neither directly addressed the alleged confrontation. Silence, once again, became the loudest statement. Behind the scenes, sources suggest there were attempts at rebuilding trust. A private dinner. A mediated conversation. Moments where emotions softened enough to allow vulnerability without accusation. According to insiders, both sisters acknowledged they didn't want the conflict to define their relationship long-term. But rebuilding trust is rarely immediate. Towanda reportedly needed space, not just from Tamar, but from the noise surrounding the situation. Tamar allegedly respected that space, though not without difficulty. For someone known for direct communication, stepping back required restraint. The alleged husband at the center of the controversy reportedly maintained his denial. Without public evidence confirming or disproving the claims, the situation remained rooted in conflicting narratives. That uncertainty added another layer of strain. When clarity is missing, imagination often fills the gap. Family gatherings reportedly felt different during this period. Conversations were polite but careful. Laughter returned in small bursts, but not with the same ease. Trust, once automatic, now required conscious effort. And then something shifted. According to insiders, what began helping the healing process wasn't rehashing the confrontation, it was revisiting history. The sisters reportedly reflected on childhood memories. On early struggles before fame. On the years they leaned on each other when no one else understood their world. Shared history has a way of reframing current conflict. When you've weathered management disputes, financial setbacks, public criticism, and personal heartbreak together, one explosive moment, even a painful one, becomes part of a larger story rather than the entire narrative. Still, scars remain. Experts often say that in family dynamics, conflicts reveal deeper patterns. Some insiders suggest this confrontation wasn't just about alleged infidelity. It may have been about long-standing communication differences. Tamar's instinct to confront directly. Towanda's instinct to process privately. Those opposing styles may have collided more than once over the years. What made this time different was the setting. Public exposure magnifies private wounds. As time passed, Subtle signs of reconciliation reportedly appeared. Joint family appearances resumed. Conversations, while measured, seemed less tense. Observers noted moments of shared smiles that didn't look forced. But reconciliation doesn't mean agreement. Sources say the sisters may never fully align on whether the confrontation was justified. Tamar may always believe she acted from love. Towanda may always believe the delivery caused unnecessary harm. Both perspectives can exist simultaneously. And that's the uncomfortable truth at the center of it all. Families don't heal by erasing conflict. They heal by learning to coexist with different interpretations of the same event. If there's one lesson emerging from this chapter, it's that intention and impact rarely match perfectly. Tamar's alleged intention may have been protection. The impact reportedly felt like exposure. Neither reality cancels the other. As for the future, insiders believe both sisters understand that their bond carries more weight than one dispute. The Braxton legacy, built on music, resilience, and sisterhood, has survived previous storms. But this moment will likely remain a reference point. A reminder of how quickly love can feel like betrayal when timing and emotion collide. Whether the full story ever becomes public, or remains partially behind closed doors, what's clear is this: the confrontation didn't just test a marriage. It tested trust, communication, and the fragile balance between honesty and